Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at when you kill a mob, adding experience, XP, to your player, and so we can start building a progression system. That's going to be the main thing we look at. We're also going to be looking at fixing some errors. There's a few errors that have been stacking up, and I got a question that someone asked in YouTube comments. So if you have any questions, put them there, and I'll add them to the list, and we'll slowly go through some of those. But I want to start out with an announcement. So if you haven't seen this yet already, the OWS developer version is now free forever. So you no longer have to be worried that what you're building here at some point in the future is going to be behind a paywall and you're going to have to pay to continue using it. So the developer version that you have, that you get here from signing up, is now free forever, and so you don't have to worry about that. And if you're wondering what the developer version is, you're basically using my web API server instead of your own. And so that's what this is getting you an API key for. You're free to use this for the development of your game, but you can't use it for large-scale tests or for production. Hold on a second here. I'm going to kill, if I can find it. That's weird. There it is, Discord. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so that's the first announcement there. And the next thing that we need to do is we need to grab the latest version. So there's a new 2018 0930 release. Just a minor change, nothing big, but we're going to be using it today. And so, as we always do, we download it. We go into our plugins folder. We dump the OWS plugin. And we come back here, open up the zip file. Go to plugins. Copy the OWS plugin folder. Back to our plugins folder and paste. It's got a new parameter we need for figuring out who got the final hit on a kill, which is what we're going to be using for adding experience. And let's see if there's anything else here. We're going to fix some errors. There's a print string that's printing that I'm not happy with. When you kill the mob, the ragdoll stuff doesn't look good. And also, if you die, the respawn point system is broken. So we're going to fix all those things today as well. I think we're going to fix the errors first and look at the question. Okay, so let's open up the project. So the question is, how do I add a non-grass material? They had said, it's an example like, shores around a lake or something. But what we're actually going to do is, I feel like we need some paths. So we're going to use one of the textures that we already have in here, and we are going to build a rocky path. So if we go into our kite demo stuff here, we have ground tiles, rocky path. So we're going to use these right here to build a new material. So we've got those down here in materials, and we're going to build a new material function. We'll call it MF rocky path. And this one's going to be incredibly simple. Make material attributes. And we're going to drag in these two. And we'll connect this to normal. And we'll connect this to base color. Holding down the 1 key. We'll start with no specular and no metallic. Holding down the 1 key again and clicking. And we'll use maybe a 0.9 roughness. And in a real game, what we would do here is we would make these parameters that we can tweak. We are going to tweak one thing here, though. And we need, I usually type coordinates. We need this texture coordinate. And we need to do a multiply. I'm hitting the star key. And we need a parameter here, a scalar parameter. And we're going to call this Rocky Path Scale. And I think a good starting value is going to be 0.3. We'll let it go from like 0.1 to... And we're going to drag that into the UVs. So this will let us, in our material instance, it'll let us adjust the scale to get the right scale of the rocks. I think 0.3 worked pretty good in what I was playing around with. So we'll save that. And now what we want to do is we want to go back to our materials folder. And we've got our landscape. And we need to add another blend. So let's make a little bit of room. We're going to copy our material layer blend standard. We're going to plug this into the base and this into the attributes. And we're going to do MF Rocky. You know, I don't know why they don't show in the IntelliSense there. It's kind of annoying. So we'll just drag it in. That always seems to work. Okay. Now we're going to need an alpha for this, and this is going to be a paintable layer, which is something we haven't done before. Now, here's an area where I either haven't found the right place to do this, or they haven't made a good place to do it, but I'll show you what I do. So here's the way I cheat it. I basically make a landscape layer blend, and I add a layer, and I call it Rocky Path. And what I found is that by doing this, even though this isn't what we want, that gets it to add. I'll show you what we need it to add. So we basically want it to add, yep, there, it already did it, sweet. So when we're over in landscape here, and we have a landscape one we're painting. Oh. That's weird. Try it again. So what we're trying to do is get a layer to show up here, which is always surprisingly hard. But let's see. Make sure I did it right here. So it has to be in the path. Instant preview wait. Usually that gets it to show up. It might not be considered complete. Hold on. Yep. I had a little bit of fun getting it to do this in my demo project too. There it is. Yeah, it's weird. There's got to be a better way to do that. And there's something else that's super annoying I'll show you here that happens. So, okay, that's the other one. So let me open it back up. So this is now a paint layer that we can paint. And we're going to add one. Weight blended means that they automatically all add up to 1. I find that doesn't work particularly well because we already have the grass and the cliffs as auto materials, and they're not going to be part of adding up to 1. So we're going to make it a non-weight blended layer. It's going to save a paint layer for us. The annoying part, of course, is that it starts with setting... Okay, this is... I was going to say it starts with setting the value to 1, but we got lucky. So that's really weird. So when I did this in the demo, I always do ahead of time. It actually started by painting this full 1 for everything. And even Epic, when they did it in the tutorial, it did the same thing too. When they added one for the first time, it started out as the Rocky Path as the full... Oh, wait. It is. It still did. It's that we haven't gone back here and fixed the material. It did. It did. It's super annoying. There's got to be some way around it. If anybody knows how to make it not start at 1, but actually start painting the whole thing at 0, that would be ideal. But I don't know. Don't know for sure if it's possible. I'll show you what we do to fix it. So let me go back into the rocky path. Nope, not that. Go back into landscape. Okay, so we didn't actually want this layer blend. I just used it to trick it into creating one. What we really wanted was layer sample, and then we type in rocky path. That's what we really wanted. But unfortunately, that never seems to create it. So now we have that, and now it'll blend correctly. It'll use that value. When it's 1, it uses rocky path. When it's 0, it uses the other. But what's going to happen here, of course, is now everything is going to be the rocky path. So what we do here, and we won't do this all on screen, but I'll show you what I do, and I'll do a small area. We basically come here and we choose paint. We use the maximum brush size, the maximum tool strength, and no fall off. And we hold down the shift key. And as you can see, I'm basically painting back. So I will be doing this off screen. It takes a little while. So we're just going to get a little bit of the area here. So anyway, you want to unpaint the whole thing. Wish there was a better way to do that, but for some reason it always starts it at 1. It'd be nice if it started new ones at 0. Maybe there's a way to do that. Okay, so now we're going to come in here with a realistic brush size and a realistic fall off and tool strength. And we're going to switch ourselves back to moving at a normal speed. And the reason that I wanted to do this is I wanted to create some paths. And so we're creating some paths here. The problem is it draws the grass on top, and that is not what we want. So here's the trick to do that. You want to subtract it out of the grass channel. So what we'll do here is we'll do a subtract, and we'll grab this. Now we're subtracting it out of the grass channel. And you can do this for as many paint layers as you have that you want the grass not to show. And there we go. Now wherever it's painted, it will subtract out the grass. So I hope that answers the question. I think that's what that was what was being asked. And so the secret there is subtracting it out, and probably it's a good idea to clamp this, just to be safe between 0 and 1. Don't know what happens if you send negative numbers. Maybe it auto clamps, maybe it doesn't, but this will make it safe. And so basically what you would keep doing here is for every one of these paint layers you want, I think our game uses 6 or 7, you would basically just keep creating more of these standard blends and more of these material functions, and go through and do that. Let's also take a quick look at the material instance. Remember we had this rocky path scale. So here we can change the draw scale, but let's go take a look at if we like it. So I think it's a pretty good size, you know, depending on how tight of those rocks you want. It's probably pretty good. I feel like that was an 8K texture too, so probably a bit overkill, but it doesn't look too bad. It'll work good enough for our paths. In one of my other copies of this project, I did a dirt one, but I kind of like the rocky path, and we're going to create out some kind of a path out here, because the next thing we're going to take care of is the respawns. So we got to kind of go out here, and it's probably a good spot. And we're going to need a respawn area here. We'll probably have to make it bigger later, but try to not get the grass growing through it. Okay, so now to fix the errors, I'm changing this back to 1, and we're going to play this, and we're going to see some of the errors that I want to take care of. Okay, so you see it's doing that despawn mob down in the log. Okay, that's the first one I want to fix. Not happy with that. So if we go into, let's see, I think that is in our mob spawner. So we'll go down here to mob and open up our mob spawner. And the problem here is that this is the latch, and this print string should have been after the latch. So it wasn't actually doing anything bad, but it was annoying that the print string was showing up over and over. So we have to put it after the latch. Okay, that's the first thing we're going to fix. Okay. Shift F1 can get you a cursor there, so we can go and show this, because I didn't show the log before. Okay, now it's not doing it. That's good. So let me show you the next problem. The next problem is that when this guy dies, you see how terrible it looks? So there's a problem with his physics object. So rather than fix his physics object, we are going to go into our mob, and someone pointed out in the comments, or it might have been somebody who messaged me, that the elemental one actually looks pretty good. Its physics object isn't as horrific. So we're just going to switch that one, and we'll take a look at it. And you'll see it looks better. Uh-oh. That's another issue we got to take a look at sometime. Yeah, see? So it just kind of rolls, rocks rolling. It's not terrible. We'll take a look at that duplicate thing, because that's kind of annoying. That's something else we'll have to look at sometime. Okay, so now the ragdoll doesn't look as bad, and the third thing is the respawn. So, I'll show you what it does. I'm going to let him kill me. That was weird. He missed and then he crit me. So eventually I get a respawn. I hit the tab key to get my cursor, and look where it respawns me, 00250. So that's not going to work. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a respawn system here. Okay, and I'm actually going to put it well, that's weird. Oh, there it is. There's our path. I thought it was like, did our path disappear? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Paragon Props, and Agora Props Meshes. I'm going to drag this base spawn pad into the world. Okay, it's a little bigger than I thought. So I'm going to go back to our painting, and I'm going to paint more rock around this so the grass doesn't come through it. Okay, so this is going to be our new spawn point. That's good enough. So we need to make a respawn actor so that we can place these. So we're going to come back here to blueprints, and we're going to say new blueprint class, actor, respawn point. And I think all we need to do here is make it hidden in game. So we're going to drag this out here and pull it up a little bit and move it toward the center. Okay, that should be good. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over into our respawn mechanics. So let's take a look here. think we want the... That's for gaining XP. Yeah. So we're going to want our base character and the event graph, and you can see this teleport is where it decides where to put you, and it was just hard-coded to 00250. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to create a new function, and we're going to create a function called get closest actor, get closest respawn point. Okay. Now we're going to do a basic search. So we're going to need two local variables. Closest distance, and that's going to be a float. And closest index. And what we're going to build here is extremely popular in computer programming. It's basically a array search. And this is the algorithm. So first you set the distance to some very high value. Yeah, there we go. Something bigger than you could actually have. Then you set the closest index to the condition where you don't find one, which is -1. Then you do a get all actors of class. So you basically want to get an array. And what you want to do is we want to get respawn point. Okay, so we can place multiple, and we're basically finding the closest one to where you died. And we're going to do a for each on this one, and not with a break. Okay. And then in each loop body, we're going to do get distance to. This is the respawn point, and we're inside the base character, so this is going to be self. And we're going to ask the question, is that one in the loop closer than the closest distance? So is that less than closest distance? It's always going to be true for the first one, which is good. That's why we made the closest distance so big. And then after that, it'll keep seeing, is there a better one? Is there a better one? Otherwise, it'll just stay on the first one. Okay. And then if that is true, set the closest distance to what we just calculated, and set the closest index to the index we found. Okay? A very common search. I have programmed this in code hundreds of times. So it's very common. And then what we do is we basically branch, and we ask the question, did we find at least one? And the way we can check that is by saying, is this greater than -1? Be careful to put that -1 in there. When I was testing this earlier, I accidentally had it as 0, and it wasn't working. Okay, so that basically says, did we find something? And so then what we want to do is we go back to the function, because we have to go to here. We want to add an output, okay, and the output is a vector, respawn location. Okay, so you'll have to find somewhere on the world if it fails. I mean, technically there should be one. So I'm just going to do 000 because you saw where that sent us. It was easy to tell if there was an error. So that'll tell us if, hey, we didn't. But as long as there's one respawn point on the map, we're good. It'll take us to that one. You'd also want to make sure there's at least one in every one of your zones, right? Because it's not going to auto-transfer to send you across zones. So you want to make sure there's at least one respawn point in every zone. And then we're going to make another copy of this one. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, it's greater than -1, so we found one, so let's get that one. and it's fine to get a copy here because we're interested in the data. We're not trying to change the data. And we're going to use closest index to say, okay, get the one you found, right? Because that's what we were getting over here. And get the actor location of that respawn point actor, that we're just dropping them just to set a location in the world. You could also have an array of them somewhere and not actually drop actors in the world, but it's visibly easy to see those, and you could put some nice text above them that said this is a respawn actor or something. So it's one way of doing things. You could also just make an array that you store somewhere that says, hey, here's all the respawn points for our game. But that's an easy way to do it for blueprints. So that should now find our respawn point. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our event graph. And we're going to say, okay, find. Oh, it's not find. It was called find. It was called find in my other project. But we're basically going to grab this. Get closest respawn point. And then that's the destination we're going to go to. And let's give it a try. So we'll let him kill us. Hitting tab to get a cursor. Oh. It's weird. We should have got our health back. Not sure why it didn't do it the other time. Let's take a look at that. There we go. Now we respawn there because that's where we dropped the respawn point. So you can place different respawn points around your map. You want to make sure there's one in every zone at least, but you could have other ones just kind of based on where you want players to go back to. In our game, we're thinking of potentially doing a thing where the respawn points are tied to faction as a way to control PvP so that people have an advantage in their homelands. So the higher density of respawn points that you have for a certain faction, it would be easier for them to control that area potentially. Whereas people who run like into the capital city might have to go back a ways if they don't have faction with them or they have negative factions. So there's a lot of fun stuff you could do with that. That's good. Okay, so let me take a look at my list here. So we did that, we fixed those errors, and now it's time to gain XP after killing them up. And this also answers another question. Someone had asked about fonts. And for what I'm going to do here, it's going to take a font. So what I'm going to add here is a class you may not be familiar with called HUD. And prior to... Don't use this OWS HUD yet. It's something that's coming in the future. But use this one here. So... prior to, UMG wasn't released with the original version of UE4. It took quite a while, I want to say a year or two, before they released UMG. And so there was this system called HUD where you could basically just draw stuff, And so if you're a game developer used to doing 2D game stuff, it's just, hey, I just need to draw a texture or draw text. And so it's a really nice way to quickly get something up and running, and it's good for pulling real-time data. And I don't love UMG. So we're going to use this. We're going to call this our HUD. And we're just going to do a simple... So we're going to get draw event receive draw HUD. So basically this is going to get called every frame, only on the local. We don't need to. So it's got this icon, so I'm not going to draw a server, a server auth there. I think that's overkill. Okay, so what we want to do is, first of all, we don't want to have to cast to our owning pawn every time. And so what we want to do is we want to come up here, we want to say get owning pawn, and we want to cast it to third person character with abilities. create owning player character of type third person character with abilities. We want to use this to get the XP. Okay, and so then I'm basically going to set it here. And as a safety, in case it tries to start drawing before the ref is good, we're going to come down here and say get is valid, and we want the macro. Always a good thing when you're need a reference to be valid. Always good to do a is valid on that. So we're going to pull off this XP. So this gets the XP. And then what we're going to use here is a draw text. Okay. And the text that we're going to do is going to be an append. And we're going to do XP colon space. And then we're going to drag the XP into this. Okay, so that's going to figure out the text. And we got to figure out where to put it. So for the screen Y, we're just going to do 20. We're going to do a top right corner thing. And then we're going to do a little bit of math here. They're sending in the values of the screen. So we're going to say minus, and let's say 200 pixels. So what you'd really do is you'd want to make sure that you scaled everything off of that properly, but we're just going to do this for now. Okay. Now here's where the issue is. I have no font asset. So we're going to come up here to our HUD folder, create a new folder called fonts, and we're going to right click user interface font. We're going to say HUD font, and we need a font file to add, but I don't have one. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to Google. And so you can go to Google Fonts, and you can do a search. And I just started typing in medieval, and I got this cool medieval sharp one. And then I went and there was a select this font. And when I did that, I got this, and there's a download button here. So when I downloaded that, I got a zip file. And inside that zip file was this medieval sharp TTF, okay? And so I'm going to go here, and I'm going to find the medieval sharp TTF. And I'll say, yeah, you can save it in fonts. That's great. And I'll take the defaults, but I want to come back here, and I want to change the legacy font size. I'm trying to think here what was a good value. Let's do 20. Okay. And we'll save this. You can do composite and backup stuff here, but we're just going to go with that for now. So there was a question somebody asked me, how do I get a font into the system? There's how you do it. And there's tons of great ones on Google. Be sure to check the licenses for those. Okay. And so now we picked our HUD font. And I'm going to change the text color to, I think, maybe something just a little off-white. Maybe it would look cool. Goldish for XP a little bit. I don't know. Let's try that. Okay. Oh, so the reason our HUD did not show is that we have not picked it in the game mode. The game mode decides which HUD to use. So I'm going to come back down to our blueprints, open up our third-person game mode. We could have also... I'll show you. That's not the way I usually do it. I usually just come over here, world settings, game mode, and pick our HUD. And then it automatically changes the game mode. It's usually easier. And there's our XP. And the reason it says 300 is because even though I run 2 test projects, they're both pointed to the same database, and I forgot to go zero that back out. So, but you can see that it's pulling the right value. So we'll make sure that it goes up to 400 and saves 400 back to the database. But obviously the loading from the database is already working because it pulled the 300 that was there. It was 0 when I started, and I killed 3 mobs while I was testing it. So then what we're going to do is we're going to create a function in our third-person character. The mobs don't need to have XP, so I'm not going to put it on the shared one. I'm just going to put it on our player one. And I'm going to create a function here called gain XP. And we'll have an input of type integer. And we'll call it XP to add. And then what we want to do, we only want to do this on authority. All right, don't want anybody cheating. And so we basically want to take this, which is the incoming XP to add, and add it to the XP amount that we already have. Then we will set the XP amount to the total of those two. And then we want to make sure it saves back to the database. And this will do an asynchronous update character stats. And that'll save it back to the database. Okay, so we've got that. So now what we need to do is we need to come into back at the base character is the one that's doing this death mechanic. And so you'll see that you now have this new who killed me. That was from updating the plugin. And it's basically the person who got the final kill. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pull this down to get us some room. And we're going to grab all of this. We'll slide it over so I got some room to work with here. So first of all, we only want to do this if who killed me is valid. If we don't know, don't do it. We only want to do this on authority. And so we'll take the not valid and just go right to the next step. We then want to say, okay, is that value a player? Cast to third-person character with abilities. And of course, if that fails, just continue with what we're going to do anyway. But in the case that it succeeds, gain XP. Now later we'll look into setting how much XP for each mob is, but just for this test today, we're going to set it to 100. And so now each time you kill a mob, you should get 100 XP. I feel like we're forgetting something, but let's give it a try. Log. So we have 300 right now. Let's go kill a mob. At some point we'll fix this issue where you can basically bug him out by sitting on the edge here. Look at that. So you see, in the top corner there it updated to 400. And now, to test that it updated in the database, we just have to hit play again, and it loaded the 400. So if you were to go into the management console and load up the character that you have set in your third-person game mode, you would see whatever value is sitting there that it did save back to the database, and it was persisted. So now we have XP that we can use in the future. We're gonna do a skill system. We're gonna do leveling up. We'll change our stats on level up, and then maybe somehow. Maybe we'll just make it to where every time you level up, you get a skill point or something. I don't know. We'll still have to figure out what we're going to do there. I'm going to check my list here to make sure that I covered everything I wanted to cover. So we answered the non-grass material and made the path. We fixed that despawn print string message. We fixed the weird ragdoll by just switching to the elemental version of the rampage. We added respawn points. And now you gain XP after killing a mob, and we used a HUD to show the XP. So I think we're good. Until next time, see ya.